Procrastination isn't laziness, it's an internal war you're losing every single day. You know exactly what needs to be done. The task is right in front of you. But something inside creates 1,000 excuses, 1,000 distractions, 1,000 reasons to do it in a bit. In a bit becomes tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week. And months later, you're still in the same place, hating yourself for the inaction. Miyamoto Musashi faced 60 life-or-death duels and never procrastinated once. Not because he had some special courage gene, but because he understood something fundamental that you haven't grasped yet. Procrastination isn't defeated with motivation. It's defeated by removing the conditions that allow it to exist. In 7 days, using the samurai method, you can transform paralysis into immediate action. But only if you're willing to be brutal with yourself. The self-help industry sold you the comforting lie that you need to find your motivation, align your values, wait for the right moment. All lies. Musashi didn't wait to feel inspired before training. He trained because that's what warriors do. He didn't wait to feel courage before a duel. He acted despite fear because he knew action creates courage, not the other way around. Procrastination is a habit. And habits don't change with philosophical insights. They change with environmental shifts and forced action protocols. The samurai method you're about to learn in the next few minutes isn't gentle, isn't comfortable, won't make you feel good about yourself. It will make you act, and action repeated for 7 consecutive days breaks any procrastination pattern, no matter how long you've been enslaved by it. In the next 10 topics, you'll receive the day-by-day protocol for the 7 most important days of your life. This isn't abstract theory. These are specific actions that start tomorrow at 6 in the morning, whether you're ready or not. Day 1 and 2, you'll physically destroy all the emergency exits you use to procrastinate. Day 3 and 4, you'll implement the samurai 5-second principle that forces action before your mind sabotages you. Day 5 and 6, you'll use reverse Kaizen, starting so small that procrastinating is harder than executing. Day 7, you'll consolidate everything into a permanent system. On day 8, you won't be a procrastinator anymore, you'll be an executor. But this only happens if you start immediately after this video ends. Not tomorrow, not Monday, now. The truth nobody tells you about procrastination. Procrastination isn't lack of time, isn't lack of skill, isn't even lack of desire to succeed. It's the brain's protection mechanism against perceived discomfort. Every time you look at an important task and feel that weight, that resistance, that voice saying, "I'll do it in a bit," what's really happening is your limbic system detecting a threat and activating an avoidance response. The task isn't dangerous, but your primitive brain doesn't distinguish between writing a difficult report and facing a predator. Both trigger the same circuit, flight. And flight manifests as distraction, as just gonna check this real quick, as I need to be in the right mental state. Musashi understood this 400 years ago without knowing neuroscience. He knew the moment between thinking and acting is where the battle happens. And whoever controls that moment controls life. The brutal truth is, you don't procrastinate things you actually want to do. Nobody procrastinates watching series, scrolling social media feeds, or eating food they love. Procrastination only exists for tasks your brain has coded as uncomfortable but important. And here's the deadly paradox. The more important the task, the more you procrastinate, because importance increases pressure. Pressure increases perceived discomfort, and discomfort triggers avoidance. You're literally programmed to avoid the things that would most change your life. That's why motivation never works long-term. Motivation is emotion, and emotions fluctuate. Musashi didn't fight 60 duels based on how he felt. He fought based on protocols that worked regardless of emotional state. You need the same. The first step to eliminating procrastination isn't trying harder. It's accepting that willpower-based attempts are a failed strategy. Willpower is a finite resource that depletes throughout the day. Every decision you make, Every temptation you resist, every time you force focus, you drain that resource. Until by the end of the day, when you finally sit down to do the important task, the tank is empty and you fall into procrastination again. Samurai didn't trust willpower, they trusted removal of choice. They didn't decide whether to train, they simply trained because they removed all other options. In the next 6 days, you'll do the same. But first, you need to identify exactly what type of procrastinator you are, because the solution changes depending on the diagnosis. The 3 types of procrastinators and which one you are. There are 3 distinct types of procrastinators, and each requires a different approach. First, the paralyzed perfectionist. This one procrastinates not from laziness, but from fear of not doing it perfectly. He spends hours planning, researching, preparing, but never starts because I'm not ready yet. I need one more piece of information. The moment isn't ideal. Musashi saw dozens of these warriors who trained obsessively in theory, but froze in actual duels. They died not from lack of skill, but from analysis paralysis. If you're this type, your poison is the search for certainty that never comes. You need the immediate imperfect action protocol you'll learn on day 3. The cure isn't better planning. It's destroying the illusion that you need to be ready before you begin. Second type, the dopamine chaser. This one starts projects with explosive energy when novelty releases high dopamine, but abandons the moment it gets boring or difficult. As 50 projects started, 0 finished. Lives jumping from thing to thing, always thinking the next project will be the one. Musashi despised these warriors who mastered 10 techniques superficially instead of one deeply. On the battlefield, multiplicity without depth is certain death. If you're this type, your poison is constant need for novelty. You need the non-negotiable 7-day commitment protocol, where no matter how bored you get, you can't jump to something else until you complete the 7 days. The cure isn't finding a more exciting project, it's developing the capacity to continue when excitement ends. Third type, the chronically exhausted. This one genuinely has no energy because they're overloaded, doing too much, sleeping too little, eating poorly, no breaks. It's not laziness, it's an empty tank trying to run. Musashi also saw this, warriors who trained until collapse and then couldn't act when it mattered. He understood that capacity for sustained action requires energy management, not just willpower. If you're this type, your poison is toxic productivity without recovery. You need the energy first, execution second protocol from day 1, which cuts 80% of useless tasks to free energy for critical ones. The cure isn't doing more, it's doing less, but with total intensity. Identify your type now, write it on paper. Because in the coming days, the intervention will be personalized. Why willpower will never work. Willpower is the weakest muscle in the human body and depletes faster than any other. Every time you resist temptation, every time you force focus, every time you suppress an impulse, you're withdrawing from a bank account with a low limit that recharges slowly. Studies show that after making difficult choices in the morning, your capacity to resist procrastination in the afternoon drops dramatically. That's why you start the day with energy, promise today will be different, but by late afternoon, you're back to the same patterns. You literally ran out of mental fuel. Musashi never trusted willpower because he observed that in moments of greatest pressure, when the duel was at its peak, willpower disappears completely. What remains are only the systems and automated protocols you built beforehand. The losing strategy you've been using is waking up every day and trying to force yourself not to procrastinate using pure willpower. This works for a few hours, sometimes a few days if you're highly motivated. But inevitably, something stresses you, something drains your energy, and in that moment of weakness, procrastination returns with full force. And then you blame yourself, call yourself weak, undisciplined, a failure. But the problem isn't you, it's that you're using the wrong tool for the job. It's like trying to cut down a tree with a kitchen knife and blaming yourself when it doesn't work. You don't need a sharper knife, you need an axe. And the axe against procrastination isn't willpower. It's environmental architecture and action protocols that don't depend on how you feel. Musashi built systems that worked even when he was exhausted, wounded, afraid, or unmotivated. He woke at the same time because he slept in the same location prepared, so that getting up was easier than staying down. He trained because he left the wooden sword in a position where he literally tripped over it, impossible to ignore. He meditated because the meditation location was the natural path between waking and starting the day. 0 decisions, 0 willpower necessary. In the next 4 days, you'll build the same type of system. You'll remove all the micro decisions that drain willpower and create an environment where correct action is the path of least resistance. But first, you need to physically destroy all the emergency exits you use to procrastinate. And that starts tomorrow on day 1. Destroy the emergency exits. For the next 2 days, you won't try to stop procrastinating. You'll make procrastination physically impossible by removing all the tools you use to avoid work. Musashi, before entering a duel, examined the terrain and eliminated all escape routes. He positioned himself where the only option was fight or die, no middle ground. This wasn't recklessness, it was strategy. When there's no exit, the mind stops looking for exits and starts fighting. You'll do the same with your environment. Day 1 starts now, today, not tomorrow. Grab your phone and uninstall all social media apps. Don't just log out, completely uninstall. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, all of them. If you need them for work, use only on computer with time blockers installed. This action takes 5 minutes but eliminates 80% of your procrastination instantly. Day 1 continues. Go to your computer settings and block distraction sites using apps like Cold Turkey or Freedom, configured to block from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. with no easy unlock option. Set a complex password you don't memorize, write it on paper, and leave it in an inconvenient location far from the computer. When the impulse to procrastinate hits and you try to access these distractions, you'll find a barrier. In the first moments, you'll feel anxiety, irritation, even anger. This is dopamine withdrawal symptom, proof you were addicted. Musashi said discomfort is the price of transformation, and those who don't pay this price remain enslaved. Enduring this discomfort for 48 hours breaks the cycle. On day 2, you'll notice something surprising. Without distractions available, your brain stops searching for them and starts accepting work as the only option. Day 2 is for eliminating physical exits. Identify the location where you procrastinate most, usually bed or couch. Make it impossible to work in these locations by removing laptop, tablet, any work tool from these areas. Bed is only for sleeping, couch only for intentional rest. Not for, I'll just work a little here comfortably. Create a Spartan workstation. Clean desk, chair uncomfortable enough that you don't want to sit doing nothing. Only essential materials for the most important task. No decoration, no objects that invite distraction. Musashi trained in austere locations purposefully because comfort invites complacency. Set up this station today on day 2. Tomorrow on day 3, when you wake up, you'll have a completely restructured environment where procrastinating is harder than executing. But environment alone isn't enough. You need the action ignition protocol, the samurai 5-second principle. There's a 5-second window between the moment you think I need to do this and the moment your mind creates the first excuse not to do it. In this microscopic window, action is still possible. After it, procrastination wins. Musashi understood this in a life or death context. In the duel, the warrior who hesitated 5 seconds was dead. The opponent who acted instantly, without internal debate, without analysis, without paralyzing fear, won. Not necessarily because he was more skilled, but because he eliminated the gap between intention and execution. In the next 2 days, you'll train this same reflex. Every time you identify a task that needs doing, you have 5 seconds to move your body toward it. Not 5 seconds to start the entire task, 5 seconds to make the first physical movement. After that movement, inertia works in your favor. Day 3 works like this. Choose the most important task you've been procrastinating, the one that if done would change everything. It could be starting that project, making that difficult call, writing that text, studying that material. Set a 5-minute timer on your phone. The moment the timer sounds, you have 5 literal seconds to make the first micro movement of that task. If it's writing, 5 seconds to open the document and type the title. If it's calling, 5 seconds to pick up the phone and dial. If it's studying, 5 seconds to open the book to the first page. The movement has to be so small the mind doesn't have time to create resistance. And here's the magic. After the first movement, the second gets easier. After the title is typed, the first sentence flows. After the number is dialed, the conversation happens. The hardest part of any task is always the beginning, and the real beginning takes only 5 seconds. Day 4. You'll intensify. Set 6 alarms throughout the day, spaced irregularly. Each time the alarm sounds, regardless of what you're doing, you have 5 seconds to start the most important task of the day. If you're already doing it, continue. If you're doing something else, stop and move to the important one. This will seem brutal, interruptive, uncomfortable. Perfect. Musashi trained in purposefully adverse conditions because he knew comfort creates weakness. By the end of day 4, you'll have forced 6 beginnings, 6 moments where you conquered procrastination through immediate action without negotiation. Your brain is starting to learn a new pattern. Thinking is instantly followed by doing, not by delaying. But even with this pattern forming, big tasks can still paralyze. That's why on day 5 and 6, you'll learn reverse Kaizen that makes procrastination impossible. Start ridiculously small. Traditional Kaizen is about continuous incremental improvement, taking small, consistent steps toward excellence. Reverse Kaizen is about making the first step so ridiculously small, you feel embarrassed not to do it. Musashi didn't start training thinking, I'll practice 3 hours today. He started thinking, I'll grip the sword once. After gripping once, he naturally did 10. After 10, he naturally practiced an hour. But if he started thinking about 3 hours, the mental resistance would be so great he'd never begin. The human mind procrastinates big tasks because it sees them as an insurmountable mountain. But nobody procrastinates taking one step. In the next 2 days, you'll break every big task into a first step so small that procrastinating is more effort than executing. Day 5 starts with a specific protocol. Take the task you've been procrastinating most and write on paper ridiculous minimum version. If it's writing a 1,000-word article, ridiculous minimum version is write 1 sentence. If it's making a difficult sales call, ridiculous minimum version is dial the number and say hi. If it's training for an hour, ridiculous minimum version is put on workout clothes and do 1 push-up. Seems stupid. Great, it's supposed to. Because when you commit only to the ridiculous minimum version, mental resistance disappears. Your brain doesn't trigger danger alarms for write 1 sentence. And here's the psychological trick. Once you write the first sentence, the second comes naturally. Once you say hi on the call, the conversation flows. Once you do 1 push-up, you usually do 10 more. Inertia changes direction. Day 6, you'll live the entire day using only ridiculous minimum versions. Every task on your list today has only the first microscopic action written. Start report becomes open document. Study chapter 3 becomes read first paragraph. Organize. Finances becomes open spreadsheet. You'll complete a dozen of these micro actions. And notice something revolutionary. In 90% of cases, after completing the ridiculous minimum version, you naturally continue for 10, 20, 30 more minutes. The other 10% where you really stop after the minimum action, still a victory because you moved the ball, created momentum, proved to yourself you can act. Musashi said 1,000 small victories build an invincible warrior, while 100 attempts at big victories build only stories of defeat. By the end of day 6, procrastination barely exists in your life anymore. But you still lack the most powerful weapon in the samurai arsenal. The morning dragon rule, eat the right frog. There's a popular productivity principle called eat the frog, which says to do the hardest task first thing in the morning. The problem is, this advice is incomplete and dangerous. It's not just any difficult task you should attack first. It's specifically the dragon, that task which, if killed today, frees up the rest of the week. Musashi didn't fight every duel that appeared. He strategically chose which battles to fight. He identified the most dangerous opponent, the one who represented the greatest threat, and eliminated him first. After that, the other opponents were trivial. In your life, there's a dragon every day. That one task, which if completed makes the entire rest of the day a victory, and if not done, makes everything else irrelevant. Most people either don't identify the dragon or avoid it all day doing smaller tasks that create an illusion of productivity. The dragon rule works like this. Before sleeping tonight, identify tomorrow's dragon. Not 3 important tasks, one single one. The one that generates the most fear, most resistance, most impact. Write it on paper and leave it on the desk where you'll work tomorrow. When you wake up, before checking any message, any email, any news, you have one mission: kill the dragon. Not even coffee before the dragon, not a long shower, not just gonna organize the desk real quick. Woke up, went straight to the work station, and immediately started the ridiculous minimum version of the dragon using the 5-second rule. The first 30 minutes of the day are sacred and belong exclusively to the dragon. If you kill the dragon in 30 minutes, excellent. The day is already a victory. If you don't kill it but wound it severely, still a victory because you created momentum you'll complete later. Musashi woke at the hardest time, before dawn, when the cold is brutal and the bed invites staying. He did this purposefully because he knew winning the first battle of the day against yourself energizes all other battles. When you kill the dragon in the morning, 2 powerful things happen. First, you enter a psychological winner state for the rest of the day, which makes all other tasks easier. Second, you eliminate the toxic anxiety that comes from knowing you still need to do that difficult thing. Anxiety that drains energy even when doing other things. Implement this for the next 7 days without exception. 1 dragon identified at night, killed in the morning, before anything else. On day 7, you'll realize you no longer procrastinate important things, you actively hunt them. But killing dragons every day requires you to be anti-fragile, and anti-fragility comes from daily intentional discomfort. Modern Misogi, daily discomfort that kills resistance. Misogi is a Japanese purification ritual traditionally done in freezing waterfalls, where practitioners stand under icy water chanting mantras until the ego dissolves and only pure presence remains. Musashi practiced extreme versions of this, standing under waterfalls in winter for hours. It wasn't masochism, it was intentional training of resistance to discomfort. He understood that procrastination is fundamentally avoidance of discomfort. So if you train to embrace discomfort daily in controlled areas, your capacity to face the discomfort of difficult tasks increases exponentially. A warrior who endures extreme cold every day doesn't fear the discomfort of a difficult conversation. In the next 7 days, you'll implement modern Misogi, a daily dose of voluntary discomfort that recalibrates your nervous system and destroys procrastination at the root. Modern Misogi has 3 levels. Choose 1 per day based on where you are. Level 1, 2-minute cold shower. Not lukewarm water gradually cooling, completely cold water from the start. Get in, breathe deep, stay 2 full minutes without escaping. Your body will scream to get out. Your mind will create 1,000 excuses. Ignore everything and complete the 2 minutes. This trains exactly the muscle you use to not procrastinate, the capacity to continue doing something uncomfortable even when everything in you wants to stop. Level 2, digital discomfort fast. Go from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. with absolutely no screen, phone stored in a drawer in another room. The first hours, you'll feel intense anxiety, almost panic. This is dependency being confronted. Sit with the discomfort. Don't flee from it. Level 3. Immediately have the conversation you've been avoiding most. That difficult call, that necessary confrontation, that truth you need to speak. 5 seconds of courage. Dial and talk. Musashi didn't choose one Misogi, he did all of them. But for you to start, 1 per day for the next 7 days already completely recalibrates your relationship with discomfort. What happens neurologically is fascinating. Every time you voluntarily embrace discomfort and survive, your brain updates the database of things that seem dangerous but aren't. Procrastination works because your brain marks difficult tasks as real threat. But when you repeatedly prove you can endure discomfort much greater than difficult task, the brain stops triggering panic alarms for work. On day 7, when you look at that project that paralyzed you last week, you'll feel less resistance because your nervous system has been retrained. But to ensure this becomes permanent and doesn't relapse, you need the fail-proof system from the next topic. How to shield against relapses, the fail-proof system. 7 days of perfect execution are impressive, but useless if on day 8 you return to old patterns. Most people complete intense challenges, feel momentary pride, and 3 weeks later are exactly where they started. Musashi understood that temporary victory means nothing. Only sustained victory matters. He built maintenance systems that guaranteed gains were never lost. The fail-proof system against procrastination relapse has 3 layers of protection, each one catching you before you fall completely. First layer, the 2-day rule. You can have 1 bad day where you procrastinate. It happens to everyone. But never, ever can you procrastinate 2 consecutive days. 1 day is an event, 2 days is a pattern. If you procrastinated yesterday, today is absolutely non-negotiable to execute, even if it's the ridiculous minimum version. This rule alone prevents 90% of relapses. Second layer, the brutal accountability partner. Identify 1 person, could be a friend, mentor, or even someone you pay specifically for this, and make an agreement. Every day at 6 p.m., you send a message reporting whether you killed the dragon or not. Not a long report, just killed or failed. If you failed, explain in 1 sentence why and what tomorrow's dragon will be. This partner isn't there to console you when you fail, they're there to remind you of the standard you committed to. The simple existence of this daily accountability makes it much harder to procrastinate because you know you'll have to admit failure to another person. Musashi had this with his students. He publicly declared his intentions and knew he'd be judged by results. Shame is a powerful tool when used correctly, not to destroy you but to keep you on the path. Third layer, the immediate restart system. When you break the sequence, and eventually you will because you're human, you have a specific restart protocol you execute immediately. Not I'll restart Monday, not I'll plan better and start next month. The moment you realize you procrastinated, you sit, identify exactly what broke in the system, adjust that specific variable, and restart literally in the next available hour. Musashi lost duels in training sometimes, but never let defeat become an excuse to stop training. He analyzed the error, corrected it, and returned immediately. Implement these 3 layers now on day 7. Choose accountability partner, write the 2-day rule in a visible place, and create a restart protocol that takes 10 minutes. With this, you're shielded against relapse. But the definitive shield comes when procrastination stops being something you resist and becomes incompatible with who you are. From procrastinator to executor, when action becomes identity, there's a moment between day 7 and day 21 where something profound changes. You stop being person trying to stop procrastinating and become person who executes. It's no longer behavior you force, it's identity you've embodied. Musashi didn't wake early because he had superhuman discipline. He woke early because it was who he was. Warriors wake early, therefore he woke early. There was no internal debate, no negotiation. Action was automatic expression of identity. You reach this point through accumulation of evidence. Each day you kill the dragon is a vote in favor of the executor identity. Each time you act in 5 seconds is proof you're the type of person who doesn't hesitate. After 7 days of consecutive evidence, your brain starts updating self-image. After 21, the new identity is practically engraved. Identity change is more powerful than any technique because techniques depend on remembering and applying. Identity simply is. When someone offers drugs to a person trying to quit, there's internal struggle. When they offer to a person whose identity is "I'm not a user," there's not even consideration. The offer is incompatible with who the person is. The same happens with procrastination. A person trying to be more productive still fights the impulse to procrastinate daily. A person whose identity is "I'm an executor, I do what needs to be done," doesn't even consider procrastination as an option. Temptation may still appear, but it's automatically rejected because it doesn't align with identity. Musashi cultivated this through repeated internal declarations. "I'm a warrior. Warriors don't flee discomfort. Therefore I don't flee." Simple, direct, absolute. In the next 21 days, after completing the initial week, you'll consolidate executor identity through 3 practices. First, every morning before killing the dragon, you say out loud, "I am an executor. I do what needs to be done even when I don't want to." Seems silly. Works because the brain processes spoken language differently than thought. Second, every night write 3 pieces of evidence from the day, proving you're an executor, not a procrastinator. Killed the dragon in 30 minutes. Applied 5-second rule 4 times. Did Misogi even tired? Accumulating evidence accelerates identity change. Third, when someone asks how you are, you respond, "I'm executing," instead of "I'm fine" or "I'm busy." Language shapes reality. On day 21, look back and see that the procrastinator who started this journey no longer exists. In their place stands an executor Musashi would recognize as a warrior. And executors don't need videos about how to stop procrastinating. They simply act. You just received the most direct and relentless protocol that exists to crush procrastination in record time. These aren't superficial motivational tips. They're samurai practices based on modern neuroscience and decades of observing human behavior. Remove emergency exits, apply the 5-second rule, start ridiculously small, kill the dragon upon waking, train voluntary discomfort, Misogi, and use shields against relapses. These elements together create an environment where procrastination is less likely than action. The secret is never trusting willpower, always trusting architecture, environment, and identity. Warriors aren't people who feel less fear or less laziness. They're those who condition their own system to act even when feeling all of that. You don't need to be perfect or heroic. You just need to apply the method with brutal consistency for 7 days. At the end of the cycle, executor identity begins to form. Each daily vote of action is like steel poured into the mind's forge. And when identity changes, behavior becomes automatic. You stop asking how to stop procrastinating and start questioning, what do I execute today? That's the difference between living trying and living doing. The challenge now is simple. Post in the comments, "I'm starting my 7-day samurai protocol tomorrow." Share what your dragon is and when you'll kill it. Involve someone real to be your accountability partner. And if this video changed your understanding of procrastination, subscribe to the channel to receive more mental combat weapons based on ancestral wisdom with modern application. Procrastinating is dying slowly. Executing is living intensely. Decide. See you in the next video, but only if you're executing.